and see you there.
Good morning, readers. Today I'm going to be talking to you about why you should read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I mean, it's not like it's a literary classic that everybody and their grandmothers has at least read or laid their eyes on. The book follows the love story between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet, and when I say love story, you're probably thinking of a Nicholas Sparks book. Oh, no. Jane Austen does a fantastic job of hiding romance with comedic elements like sarcasm. The provocative lead is really the essence of the novel, and that's really what hooks you into the whirlwind of the absurd time period. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Hold the phone! So if you're a single man, somewhat rich, that means that you want to get married? Interesting. Gotta love the 1800s. You have these rich characters like Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy, bachelors. And you'd think that this is the Prince Charming moment where the bachelor searches the entire village to find the girl. Oh, no. That's where dichotomy comes in. You have Mr. Bingley on one hand, super sweet, super nice, a proper gentleman. He's lively, unreserved, he danced every single dance. In fact, he was angry that the ball finished so early and then he planned to arrange one on his own, which, spoiler alert, does. And if we flip to the next page, you'll see Jane Bennet, who's his love interest, and she uses words such as sensible, good-humored, lively, happy-mannered, so much ease with so perfect good breeding. I mean, how can you not love the guy? Then you have Mr. Darcy, this dark, mysterious man with such a negative aura. Mr. Darcy, he knows he's on top of the social ladder and he'll disregard anybody and everybody that comes in his way. When Mr. Bingley tries to set him up with Elizabeth, he says, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Now, obviously this is a major foreshadowing because, hint hint, she does tempt him and they do end up, you know. Am I revealing too much? I guess you're just gonna have to read the book. Back to Bingley trying to set up the two lovebirds, Mr. Darcy proudly states, "Miss Bennet, he acknowledged to be pretty, but she smiled too much." She smiled too much? Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy, they're polar opposites, but I guess that's what makes them best friends. Speaking of which, there's also tons of dichotomy between Elizabeth Bennet and Charlotte Lucas. Elizabeth Bennet, she's very opinionated. She's witty, she's clever. She rejects the famously pompous Mr. Collins because of how hasty his proposal is. Then you have Charlotte Lucas. "I ask only a comfortable home, and considering Mr. Collins' character, connection, and situation in life, I'm convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people can boast on entering the marriage state." Wait, what? Yep. She marries Mr. Collins because unlike Elizabeth, she just wants to get settled and be with a fortunate man rather than, actually living her life and finding true love. If you look at this with a historic lens, it does make sense because the sole purpose for women at the time was to find a man, reproduce, and then get settled, and then serve the man for the rest of his life. I mean, it was a man's world. But Elizabeth Bennet, she's just so ahead of her time, rejecting a settled man even though it was her mother's dying wish to see her happily married. There's just so much arguable dichotomy between all the central characters in the book, and I think the polar opposites is really what binds them together. You have characters like Wickham, Collins, Mr. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet, Bingley, Darcy, Charlotte, Elizabeth, Miss Bingley, Mr. Bingley. I mean, I could talk about dichotomy all day. Did somebody say Miss Bingley? Yes. You mean the biggest unreliable narrator in the entire book? Oh, how could I forget? Miss Bingley, what a woman. She's like the evil stepsister trying way too hard to fit into Cinderella's slipper. Her motives are really unclear in the beginning, but then later you start to realize that she's just jealous of Elizabeth because of the affection Mr. Darcy gives her. There's this very meta moment where Miss Bingley literally picks up the sequel to the book that Darcy's reading, and as if she isn't trying hard enough to impress him, she proudly states, "When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." I guess she just wants the attention from Darcy, but Darcy's so head over heels for Elizabeth, he's not gonna realize. To make matters even worse, she sets up Mr. Bingley with Miss Darcy, hoping that'll increase Darcy's affection for her. I mean, who are you? The unreliable narrator, that's what she is. No, I can't spoil the ending because, you gotta read the book. But I can say that it's a very heartwarming, allegorical ending. The poetic justice is evident where the good guys get what they deserve and the bad guys, well, meh. They're just going to live miserable lives. The ending makes you think back to all the themes of finance, reputation, marriage, coming of age, and you realize that it breaks all stereotypes of the time. It's quite clever actually, because you think that this is just a happy ending, but Jane Austen is really disguising the fact that you don't need to be rich or come from a family of kings and queens to find somebody reputable. I mean, you fall in love with a person, not a reputation. So pick up your copy of Pride and Prejudice ASAP. The clock's ticking and the Bennets are waiting. Happy reading!